The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of this YouTube video. Hey, it's Hallie and welcome back to my wonderful little YouTube channel. It's the 30th anniversary of Donna Tartt's The Secret History. I've been thinking a lot about its rise in popularity and why a film hasn't come along with that. And now why I'm starting to think like it just shouldn't happen. Here is the 30th anniversary edition, by the way. It's very cute. This is going to be a long one, so strap in, get a hot chocolate, tidy your room if you want to tidy your room. Make sure you send this to your best friend so that you can talk about it. Let's get into it. Before I start, I want you to know that I am a fan of this book, so I'm not going to spend this entire video dragging it, but I will be addressing its problems and its complexities. Okay, let's really get into it. What is The Secret History about? The Secret History is a 1992 novel by author Donna Tartt. Set in Vermont, it tells the story of a group of classics students who become involved in a situation that leads to the murder of their classmate Bunny. The book is, loosely of course, based on Donna Tartt's experience at Bennington College, which becomes Hampton College in the book. Tartt first started at Bennington College in 1982 alongside rich kids like Bret Easton Ellis, author of American Psycho, and Jonathan Lethem, author of The Fortress of Solitude. As you'll know, Donna Tartt dedicated The Secret History to Bret Easton Ellis, which was kind of shade, but also wholeheartedly appreciation too. Bennington in this era had been described as an edgy anti-college, but it also had some of the most expensive tuition fees in the whole of the United States, including the Ivies. Tartt's characters are based on many of her friends, acquaintances, and partners from college. There's this super funny quote from Matt Jacobson, who is so obviously Bunny, and it says, "I called my mother and said, I've been caricatured in a book, and my character gets killed. And she said, no one would ever kill you, not even in print. Then she read the book and said, that's all right. I wore wire-rimmed glasses like Bunny. I had dyslexia," that's what they called it in the 70s anyway, like Bunny. "And like Bunny, I was an extremely affected young man. One day in the dining hall, I was gawking at some girl and said, reminds me of the way Diana's painted on the ceiling of my father's club. And that line found its way into Donna's book. And I'd invite people to lunch and then realise I didn't have any money. Something dear old Bunny does. And I was kind of a horrible bounder, though in my case, it was never intentional." Donna Tartt herself remains an enigma, both known and not really known by her friends and peers. I super highly recommend this piece from Esquire. It talks a lot about all the crazy happenings at Bennington College when Donna Tartt and Bret Easton Ellis were there, and the fallout after they both rose to stardom. It's absolutely insane. Whatever you're expecting, expect more. Let's focus back on the book itself. Donna Tartt...
So, Dula Peep...
Donna Tartt was only in her 20s when The Secret History was sold to publisher Knopf for around $500,000. The reviews upon its release were glowing. A New York Times review raved that it was a ferociously well-paced entertainment, and Vanity Fair called it a huge, mesmerising, galloping read, pleasurably devoured. With a book making waves like this, you might be asking, why hasn't this book become a movie already? This book came out in 1992, and we're in the 2020s now and still nothing. The journey of the film rights is super interesting, so strap in. Shout out to this article from Town & Country magazine. It shows the timeline super clearly, so if you're interested in this, I highly recommend you read it. But I will give you the shorthand version of that. Okay, bear with me on this because it's a little complicated. So, the book was released in 1992. Very quickly after, a famous director gained the film rights under Warner Brothers. The screenplay was going to be written by none other than famous writers Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunn. I find this super interesting because Joan and John's daughter Quintana actually went to Bennington with Donna Tartt and Bret Easton Ellis, and there was absolutely a crossover between these groups of people. In a shocking turn of events, the director was killed in a car crash in 1988. Without him to push the project, it just never really got off the ground. In 2001, one of Donna Tartt's agents was quoted in Variety saying, "If you don't make the right deal for a book early on, it's going to set you back a long time. This was foreshadowing for sure. But in 2002, we're back. Donna Tartt had just released her second novel, The Little Friend, but that wasn't the biggest news in her sphere. Miramax had just acquired the rights to The Secret History, but you'll never guess who was developing it. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to guess. None other than Gwyneth Paltrow and her brother Jake Paltrow. An agent of Donna's confirmed that that script was being written as they spoke. So again, what happened to this film? Unfortunately, another death. Gwyneth and Jake's father died of pneumonia that year, and again, the project was shelved. You'd think, okay, couldn't anyone else take this on? It just wasn't a priority for Miramax, and they let the film rights lapse after just a year. This meant that the film rights for The Secret History just went back to Donna Tartt. Fast forward to 2013. Whilst teenagers were ruining their frontal lobes on Tumblr, more buzz around this film started to happen, and a conversation around film rights picked up again. Melissa Rosenberg, who literally was the screenwriter for all of the Twilight films, by the way, like, oh, can you imagine? And also Bret Easton Ellis. So Melissa Rosenberg and Bret Easton Ellis decided that they wanted to develop the film and turn it into a mini-series. Did you just get excited? Is something about to happen right now? Unfortunately, the answer is no. It literally just never happened. So those film rights are still with Donna Tartt, and rumour has it she's not interested in making a film anymore. Wasn't that such a weird journey? Like, maybe even a little cursed? Okay, let's bring it forward. What happens now? It's the 2020s, and this book is super popular. Why The Secret History should never become a movie. With The Secret History having a major moment because of the rise of TikTok, Pinterest, and the dark academia aesthetic, you might be sitting here thinking, like, what is she talking about? This is the perfect time to make the film. Let me break down why The Secret History should not become a film. The Secret History, romanticization, or critique. If you're watching this video, you're probably, like me, a fan of this book. But you'd be super surprised as to the millions of ways people have interpreted it over the past 30 years. Let's take a look at some of the key ones. A Reddit thread opens the floor to key debates around this book. It asks the question, is The Secret History mocking all the egotistical, pretentious characters? Now, you're often going to come across these takes. Example 1. We all have our own opinions, but I highly doubt she's mocking them. It's my favourite book, and I've done intensive research on Donna Tartt's life and even applied to Bennington College. Because of her. Her college experience and Richard's were extremely alike. I really don't think she was mocking them, considering she was pretty much one of them. Okay, and example 2 goes like this. I don't get why people romanticize these characters when they're literally satire. I find both of these takes really interesting, and it kind of feeds into why I don't think The Secret History should become a film. I want to look at a couple more takes from the internet that apply a level of nuance that I do agree with. I think it's complicated. I think she values their erudite nature and dedication to a very lofty ideal of academia. I think we're supposed to be taken by the romance of the sort of lives they live there. But, spoilers, these people either end up dead or profoundly miserable by the end of the novel. They think they're above any sort of conventional morality, and their lives fall apart because of it. It's definitely a bit satirical, but also a loving homage within the satire. I think it plays a bit in the space of the aesthetic being enthralling, but also corrupting. The students aren't very good people, but they're still people. The reason the characters are so miserable is because they are living for their aesthetics. The misery fits their aesthetic. The long hours studying, the decline in mental health, and a flair for the dramatic are at the core staples of dark academia. This book isn't about glorifying these qualities, it's criticising how unfulfilling and destructive their elitism is. Books like The Secret History aren't always about one thing. In fact, I would agree that the point of the book is to slip into and experience the high of the events in the way Richard does. But then you fall. You're meant to realise that these characters are fundamentally flawed people. They're not as smart as they think they are, they're incredibly privileged and conceited people. At its core, it's a critique of these characters and the privileges that allow them to behave in the way that they do. But just because a book concludes one way, doesn't mean that it didn't revel in the romanticization of it. I kind of feel like this battle between aestheticism, romanticization, and its critiques just won't play out well on film. Especially not now in the 2020s. Here's why I think that. All of these conversations and thoughts around the book and a potential film, I think are really coming to light because of just the rapid traction that dark academia as an aesthetic has gained over the past maybe 5 to 10 years. The Secret History is one of the core texts that has driven this aesthetic's popularity over time. We've also seen what happens when people engage in the dark academia aesthetic without any nuance or critical analysis. Ultra-romanticization. As an interest in dark academia has increased, we've also seen an increase in the fetishization of Donna Tartt's characters and the Secret History as a whole. I want to state that I don't believe that everyone who's interested in dark academia is involved in this, but I'm also not saying that it isn't a thing, because it's absolutely a thing. You can take a short look at TikTok if you're interested in seeing this. Without critical analysis applied to both the book and the wider dark academia aesthetic, we're left with a romanticization of a very white, Eurocentric, privileged view of education and life. That is not the intent of the book or the dark academia genre as a whole. The film could absolutely go in this ultra-romanticized direction, with either the filmmakers not fully addressing and showcasing the book's critiques of the characters' lifestyles, or moviegoers latching onto the beautiful visuals, disseminating them across platforms like TikTok without context, controls, or critical thinking skills. The good, the bad, and the problematic. Let's ask the burning question. Would this film be acceptable to make in the 2020s? I don't think so. The language. Donna Tartt uses cruel and derogatory language, including homophobic, racist, or classist dialogues to prove the bad in her characters. For example, quite early on in the book, we see Bunny go on this incredibly jarring tirade about gay men. He even drops the F word. Would that be acceptable sitting in the film scripts of the 2020s, regardless of the point that it was trying to make? It calls into question whether Donna Tartt had the right to invoke speech like that in order to make a point. A lot has happened in media, literature, film, and political movements in the 30 years since this book's release. We've had a lot of films exploring the disillusionment with modern markers of success. Fight Club for masculinity, American Psycho and The Wolf of Wall Street for corporate cultures and capitalist dreaming, Virgin Suicides for utopian American suburbia, or even smaller productions like The Riot Club for fetishization of the upper class lifestyle and elite education. It's kind of funny because all of those films are really aestheticized and romanticized on social media, actually. That's not to say that any of those films are bad, but they're certainly a product of their time. At this point in time, a new production of The Secret History, a book about rich white kids with immense amount of power and privilege, could result in a film that feels done before, trite, out of touch, problematic, or just plain cliche. I think there was a time when this film could have been made, but I also feel like that time has passed. Casting. Making this film a good fit for the 2020s is a real challenge, and I've seen lots of people suggest that diversifying the cast could make the film fit and ready for the 2020s. I even saw a major publication try and fan cast John Boyega as Richard. My answer to that is no. I don't think that colourblind casting is a solution to a book like this, which so aptly shows the way white power and privilege works and enables these characters to engage in the behaviours that they did. This privilege influences their overall philosophies. Even Richard, as an outsider of the group who is less well off than the group, still does benefit from the white male privilege that allows him to slide into spaces like that in the first place. His whiteness is just as important as the other characters. Bennington College, Donna Tartt's alma mater, was also incredibly white. So here's the issue. I don't think colourblind casting is the correct decision for a film like this, but if you take that away, you're left with an incredibly white cast in the 2020s. It's not looking good. And again, it might be fair to say that production houses should be focused on equaling the playing field as to whose stories are presented on film. Even taking the issue away of colourblind casting, you're left with another big blow. What casting of this film would actually make people happy? As a side note, in the 90s, fan favourites of this film at the time were young Hollywood heavyweights like Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio. Can you imagine watching that now? We also live in an era where films are undoubtedly tainted by the people who are in them. Like how seeing Armie Hammer is just a jump scare now. So how would this work? Let's look at the real descriptions of the characters based on what's written in the novel, and then look at dream fan castings for The Secret History over the years. This is just for fun. I found it funny. Henry, the larger of the two, and he was quite large, well over 6 feet, was dark-haired with a square jaw and coarse pale skin. He might have been handsome had his features been less set or his eyes behind the glasses less expressionless and blank. Zane Holtz, George Mackay, Penn Badgley, Max Minghella, Cillian Murphy. Bunny, the smaller of the two but not by much, was a sloppy blonde boy, rosy-cheeked and gum-chewing, with a relentlessly cheery demeanour, and his sandy hair was parted on the left, so a long forelock fell over one bespectacled eye. Bunny Cochrane was his name. Patrick Gibson, Garrett Hedlund, Dave Franco, Cord Overstreet, and Michael Pitt. Francis, the third boy, was the most exotic of the set. Angular and elegant, he was precariously thin, with nervous hands and a shrewd albino face, and a short fiery mop of the reddest hair I've ever seen. George Mackay, Dylan Bell, Luke Newbury, Anton Yelchin, Timothy Chalamet, and Ollie Alexander from Years and Years? Charles and Camilla. They looked very much alike, with heavy dark blonde hair and epicene faces, as clear, as cheerful and as grave as a couple of Flemish angels. Emily Allen Lind, Mia Wasikowska, Natalia Dyer, Saoirse Ronan, and Cara Delevingne. George Mackay, Dane DeHaan, Alex Pettifer, Jesse Plemons, Jamie Bell. Look at this article too, like, I'm dead, but it so acutely satirises how ridiculous the fan casting obsession is with this film. I think any casting director who took this on would have the worst time of their lives trying to make everyone happy about this. To be honest, that's the way with like all cult books. In conclusion, I have a lot to say about casting, but essentially it just sounds like a nightmare on so many levels. Donna Tartt's writing. Does it translate? I think Donna Tartt is an incredibly descriptive and immersive writer, which is probably why the book is so popular. The fact that Donna Tartt's real college is the basis for the college in the book is really helpful, but it doesn't guarantee a seamless adaptation from book to film. As a case study, let's look at reviews for The Goldfinch, which was a book to film adaptation of Donna Tartt's third book. I've read The Goldfinch and I've watched the film, and I was disappointed. These critics say the same. A flat and lumbering, albeit beautifully filmed drama that bores me more than it entertains. I sat there watching and thinking, there's so many good things in this, and yet none of them are touching me in the slightest. Painfully one note, and sort of pointless. A beautifully shot mess. There's no sense of pace or mystery, but rather an evident need to get through Tartt's dense plotting in a 2.5-hour runtime. Even at 2.5 hours, John Crowley's film version of The Goldfinch feels compressed, sacrificing plot development for the sake of character development to the point where it becomes absolutely unbelievable. It's well crafted, but there's absolutely no emotional connection. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, The Goldfinch was an incredibly dense book, and I feel like it could have been cut down significantly. With that being said, her visual descriptions, her ideas, and her characters really resonated with me, and I had a very visceral emotional reaction when the book ended. With the film, I was just like, oh. It didn't feel like they found a way to translate or convey that at all. And it was a long film too, and it stars Ansel Elgort. Yikes. Would The Secret History face the same issue? I think it could. Those long, dense, philosophical conversations could really bore moviegoers, but in the book they feel really integral. Would a filmmaker cut them down or get rid of them altogether? Another thing is like how they would best convey Richard's point of view. Would they do it with like a lot of narration and direct quotes from the book, like Baz Luhrmann's The Great Gatsby? Would they leave the audience to contemplate in relative silence? Or would it be a mishmash of both? I think in all cases it could cause problems. A mix of them could definitely feel messy. We could end up with another film that felt incredibly flat, like The Goldfinch. You might be thinking that something like a miniseries could work, but if a production company went down the route of turning The Secret History into a miniseries, would the TV show be able to keep good pace? Would each episode be interesting enough to keep people's attention? I read a really interesting quote from someone who did want The Secret History to hit screens, and I found it super interesting. I loved this book when I was an impressionable university student. I think a film adaptation was mooted in the 90s, but it would be perfect for a TV adaptation, maybe in 6 parts on Apple or HBO. It has nostalgic 80s, 90s vibes, which are all the rage, and a classic outsider trying to fit in with the cool kid story that jumps backwards and forwards. I imagine if it was Netflix, it would turn into a parody of Cruel Intentions, or just a dull slog if it was on Amazon. I find it really interesting that not only do we have all these other factors to contend with when it comes to book to film or book to series adaptations, but people are more interested than ever about which production house or streaming platform is going to do the best job adapting a book to the screen. There are just so many parts at play. But what does this all show? This all shows that from the romanticization and critique debate, to the casting, to the era that we're in, and to the project of filmmaking, we can just tell that everyone has a profoundly different and varied version of what they would like to see this film be. I think that The Secret History continues to survive today because it's left to people's singular imaginations. It's also still anchored in a time where this story was a great one to tell. It was interesting, it was groundbreaking, and it suited the time it was in. For all the fans of the book, I don't think that A Secret History film could be anything other than disappointing. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.